If money wasn't an option, what could we get? And honestly, we got like almost everything because we really try to make the experience as good as possible for the athlete. We want to make it worth their while. We try to be really upfront from the beginning too. Like if there's anything you guys want, let us know. Any suggestions, we really took those to heart. We try to accommodate for anything anyone asked for. I feel like there's not for want here.
Picture this. The WNBA is absolutely crushing it right now. Sold out arenas, massive TV deals, celebrities courtside every night. But behind closed doors, people who know the business are quietly betting there won't be a 2026 season. What the hell is going on? We're 8 months deep into what should have been boring contract negotiations between WNBA players and owners. Instead, it's turned into a total mess. Multiple sources are saying recent meetings went so badly that brands, actual corporate sponsors, are already making backup plans. This isn't normal, oh, we'll figure it out stuff. This is, holy crap, this might actually blow up territory.
WNBA?
What? Yeah. Wait, right now?
Just like,
wait, she's not playing anymore?
3 minutes ago, just posted about it.
What?
So.
Wow. Like effective immediately? Wow. I think, obviously, Candace has had an amazing career.
Here's what makes this absolutely wild. You've got a league that's never been more successful, players with more power than they've ever had, and here's the kicker. Those same players literally own their own competing league. It's like if the employees threatening to strike also happen to own the company across the street. The old rules don't apply anymore, and nobody knows what happens next. Today, I'm going to take you inside this mess. We'll separate what we actually know from what people are just guessing about, and I'll show you why this could either make women's basketball stronger than ever or completely blow it up. Buckle up.
Everybody is pissed in the WNBA at the fact that Caitlin Clark is famous and is making them all richer. You want to talk about a zero-sum mentality? That right there is a massive zero-sum mentality.
First, let me paint you the picture of how this used to work. WNBA contract negotiations. Pretty straightforward. The league was small, money was tight, and if players didn't like their deal, their only option was basically, see ya, enjoy playing in Russia for 6 months. Players had zero leverage, zero options, zero power. But then everything changed. 2024 was absolutely insane for the WNBA. We're talking record attendance where teams that used to play in half-empty arenas are now selling out. And there's a massive new TV deal bringing in way more money than before, though they won't tell us exactly how much because that's how sports business works. And they're not stopping there. They're adding multiple new teams over the next few years, including Portland and others.
WNBA All-Star Game is a contradiction in terms. As Shane Gillis pointed out, there are no stars in the WNBA, basically outside of Caitlin Clark. That's just the reality of the situation.
But here's where it gets crazy. Enter Unrivaled, a player-owned league that reportedly just finished its first season. WNBA players can make real money during the off-season without the nightmare of moving to Europe, dealing with visas, or being away from family for months. For the first time ever, WNBA players have a legitimate plan B. And that changes everything. Now, I want to be clear about what we do and don't know. Most CBA negotiations happen behind closed doors for good reason. Both sides need space to negotiate without public pressure affecting their positions. So we're working with limited public information, industry reporting, and careful analysis of what players and officials have said publicly.
Both sides of the WNBA All-Star Game decided to walk out on courts reading with shirts reading, "Pay us what you owe us." Now, my friend Matt Walsh made the claim that the number there is zero. So, brave move to call for a zero pay.
According to reports, The Athletic asked WNBA players a simple question. If you could fix one thing in the new contract, what would it be? The answer was brutal in its simplicity. 70% said higher salaries. Not better working conditions, not more respect, not revenue sharing, just pay us more money. If these numbers are real, it tells you everything you need to know. All the fancy talk about equity and partnership, players just want their paychecks to match the hype. But here's where this gets really messy. Nobody knows how much money anyone is actually making.
You could make a credible case, really, seriously, you could make a credible case that the ladies ought to be paid a little bit more. The credible case is basically that the collective bargaining agreement between the NBA and NBA players means NBA players pull down about half of the gross revenue of the league.
The WNBA's financial numbers, good luck finding recent reliable data. Claims about whether they're profitable, how much the NBA subsidizes them, exact revenue figures. You literally cannot verify any of this stuff through public sources. This is insane when you think about it. In NBA negotiations, everyone knows the revenue numbers, salary cap rules, and financial details. Same with NFL and MLB. But the WNBA, it's like trying to negotiate a deal while wearing blindfolds. Players can point to packed arenas and say, clearly, you can afford to pay us more. Owners can point to expansion costs and say, we're already spending everything we have. Both sides might be totally right or totally wrong because nobody has the full picture.
And in the WNBA, the players pulled down about 9% of the gross revenue of the league. Now, the other side of that argument is the WNBA makes zero money and loses money every single year, all the time.
Here's what we know for sure. During All-Star Weekend, players showed up wearing "Pay us what you owe us" shirts. This wasn't some casual protest. This came right after what multiple sources call disastrous CBA meetings. When professional athletes start making public statements like that, you know things have gone completely off the rails behind closed doors. And now, word is that corporate sponsors are quietly preparing for the league to just not exist next year. Meanwhile, the league is simultaneously announcing expansion while players argue current rosters are already too thin. Multiple teams have relied on hardship contracts this season, suggesting a roster depth issue that expansion could exacerbate.
And legitimately, the only person in the WNBA who's driving ratings is Caitlin Clark. Now, this is the part that's really funny. And forget about the equal pay argument or pay us what we're worth. Okay, you're worth what the market will pay you. If you think that you are irreplaceable in the WNBA, you got another thing coming.
The math is straightforward. If you're adding 4 new teams over 4 years, you need roughly 48 to 60 additional players, depending on roster sizes. But players are arguing that current 12-player rosters are already insufficient for a 40-game season plus playoffs. This creates a fascinating economic puzzle. Expansion generates revenue through franchise fees and new markets, but it also increases operational costs and dilutes talent pools. From a business perspective, expansion makes sense if you believe the overall market is growing fast enough to support more teams. From a player perspective, expansion without roster increases means more competition for the same number of spots, potentially weakening individual bargaining power.
I was talking about how I want to be a mom someday. I want to have a family relatively early. You know, what is that going to look like? I'm going to need someone to travel with me. I feel good right now. I'm in my 2nd trimester and they say that's the easiest one.
The timing of announcing expansion during CBA negotiations could be interpreted as either confidence in reaching a deal or pressure tactics to demonstrate the league's growth trajectory. Unrivaled reportedly completed its first season with consistent scheduling, professional production values, and player payments. This suggests it can function as a viable alternative income source, not just a temporary experiment. Critically, it's founded by Nafisa Collier and Breanna Stewart, both WNBA Players Association representatives who are directly involved in the current negotiations. The league featured multiple players in a concentrated location, making it logistically simpler than overseas alternatives. Optimists would argue the WNBA's growth justifies higher player compensation, and that successful negotiations could accelerate momentum, potentially creating a sustainable business model that benefits everyone long-term. Skeptics might point out that rapid expansion and increased costs could strain resources, making significant salary increases difficult to sustain without confirmed long-term revenue growth. Both perspectives have merit based on available evidence, and the reality likely contains elements of both viewpoints. What makes this situation analytically interesting is that players have created their own alternative market that functions during the WNBA's offseason. In previous sports work stoppages, NBA lockouts, NFL strikes, MLB work stoppages, players' main options were sitting out or finding temporary work elsewhere. Unrivaled changes that equation entirely because it operates in the same sport, with many of the same players, and offers meaningful compensation without requiring players to leave the country or adapt to different playing styles and team cultures. Now, let's talk about the part that makes this absolutely bonkers. Nafisa Collier and Breanna Stewart. They're not just WNBA players. They're not just my union representatives negotiating on behalf of all players. They literally own Unrivaled. So if the WNBA goes into a lockout, they're competing business benefits. More top players would come to their league, more fans would watch, more sponsors would pay attention. Think about how wild this is. Imagine if the people negotiating for NBA players also owned a league that would get bigger and better if the NBA shut down.
They could bring in all the scrubs tomorrow for every player except for Caitlin Clark, and no one would notice. There's no such thing, really, in the WNBA, just on a marketing level, as a below replacement value. You could pick up any group of college basketball playing women, substitute them in, except for Clark, who's famous.
The conflict of interest is staring everyone in the face, but nobody wants to say it out loud. When Collier wore an Unrivaled shirt during the WNBA All-Star Draft, was that player empowerment, or was she basically saying, we have options and you should be worried? Maybe it was both. And here's what makes this timing absolutely brutal. The WNBA is having the best run it's had since the late 90s when it first launched. This is their moment. This is when casual fans are finally paying attention, when celebrities are showing up, when the sport feels bigger than it ever has. A lockout now would be like setting your house on fire right after you finished renovating it. Players would lose money and exposure during potentially their peak earning years. The league would lose all those new fans they worked so hard to get. Sponsors would take their millions elsewhere. Everyone loses, but they might do it anyway. Without clear financial numbers, both sides are basically negotiating blind, which creates extra problems beyond typical labor fights. Players can point to growth numbers and packed arenas as proof that the league can afford higher pay. They can point to social media buzz, merchandise sales, and the obvious excitement around the league as evidence that value is being created. Ownership can point to expansion costs, facility improvements, charter flight expenses that reportedly cost millions every year, and infrastructure investments as reasons why big salary increases might not be doable. They might also point to the risks of growing too fast and the need to keep money in reserve for potential economic downturns. Both arguments make sense, but neither side has the full picture of the other's financial situation. This lack of shared information is unusual in professional sports, where financial transparency is typically much higher during collective bargaining periods. Here's what we honestly don't know: whether current growth can keep going long term, what the actual financial health of individual teams looks like, how much flexibility teams have in their budgets, or what the new TV deal actually provides in terms of yearly revenue increases. Most sports labor fights involve at least some known financial numbers: team values, revenue figures, or salary cap rules. This negotiation is happening with way less public financial information than we usually see in major professional sports. Looking ahead, several factors will likely decide how this plays out, and understanding these helps us figure out what's realistic versus what's wishful thinking. First, whether the new TV deal money is enough to meet player pay demands without hurting expansion plans or day-to-day improvements. Second, how Unrivaled's continued existence affects whether players are willing to compromise. If players have a good alternative that pays well, their negotiating position gets much stronger. Third, whether expansion timeline pressures force creative solutions that might not have been considered in normal negotiations. So how does this end? I see 3 ways this could go down. Scenario 1. Somehow they figure it out in the next few months. Players get paid, the league keeps growing, and we look back on this as the moment the WNBA became a real sustainable business instead of a charity case. Everyone wins, the sport explodes even more. Scenario 2. Short-term disaster, long-term success. They have a lockout, miss part of the season, but eventually reach a deal both sides can live with. Think NBA lockouts in '98 and 2011. Painful at the time, but the league came back stronger. Scenario 3. Total meltdown. Extended fight, momentum dies, star players permanently leave for other leagues, and we spend the next decade wondering what could have been. This would be like watching professional soccer in America collapse again. Except this time the players have somewhere else to go that actually pays well. Key indicators moving forward include public statements from Players Association leadership, particularly how they frame the urgency of reaching agreement. Watch whether brands adjust their WNBA commitments or sponsorship timing. Corporate partners often have inside information about potential disruptions. Monitor how Unrivaled positions itself during any potential work stoppage and whether they make moves that suggest they're preparing to absorb more players. Pay attention to whether any current WNBA players make public statements about their willingness to play in alternative leagues during a potential lockout. Also watch for any financial disclosure that might provide actual context for negotiations, though this seems unlikely given both sides' preferences for privacy. The behavior of agents and representatives could also provide insights, as they often have the clearest picture of market dynamics and player sentiment. But honestly, the signs aren't looking good when you have corporate sponsors preparing contingency plans 8 months before the season is supposed to start. That tells you everything you need to know about where this is heading. We'll judge success based on several things: whether any deal keeps the league's growth path going without hurting it, keeps star players in the WNBA long term rather than losing them to other options, and sets up a financial structure that can support continued expansion. The bigger question is whether women's basketball can support multiple profitable leagues at the same time, or whether this is a fight for limited fan attention and sponsor dollars. Look, here's the bottom line. We're watching something that's never happened before in sports: labor negotiations during a league's best period ever. With union reps who own the competition, the normal playbook is useless here. So what do you think? Are Collier and Stewart absolute geniuses who've figured out how to have all the leverage? Or is this conflict of interest going to blow up in everyone's face? Does the timing help players or hurt them? And honestly, should we be worried about the 2026 season? Let me know what you think, and let's keep this focused on what we can actually figure out with the info we have.